Good morning, everyone. So, this is a lecture 3 on the topic repugnancy between central law and state law under Unit 4. Today's topic is repugnancy between a central law and a state law. So, let's begin. The first thing is, what do we mean by repugnancy? The word you can see repugnancy. What do we mean by this word? Repugnancy. It means inconsistency. Is inconsistency between a central law and a state law. Right? And according to the Black Laws Dictionary, repugnancy, it could be defined as an inconsistency or contradiction between two or more part of legal instrument. The basic meaning of repugnancy is inconsistency. Now, in case of repugnancy between the law, there is an inconsistency between a law made by the union and a state. And that law is relating to subject matter of the concurrent list, which I have told you is the third list in the previous lecture, where both union and state are allowed to make they are empowered to make the laws. Now, what does 354(1) says? It says that if any provision, it is written, follow it, if any provision of law made by the legislature of state, if any provision of law made by the legislature of state is repugnant, is inconsistent to any provision of law made by parliament, which is competent to enact, or to any provision of existing law with respect to the matter given in concurrent list, then in that situation the law made by parliament, whether passed before or after the law made by legislature of such state, whatever the case may be, the existing law shall prevail, and the law made by legislature of state shall to the extent of repugnancy be void. So this clearly, first thing, what does it say is that there is a direct conflict. When does the repugnancy arises? So there can be an inconsistency when the statute, as when one legislature says do and the other says don't, and there is a clear direct inconsistency between central act and the state act, and such inconsistency is to bring the two acts into direct collision. And there is a situation where it is impossible to obey one without disobeying the other. So the first very important thing it says is that there has to be a direct conflict. There can also be an apparent conflict or collision between the two provisions. Or even if there is no direct conflict, but intently it is, the inconsistency arises. So in this situation, the article says that parliament law, the law made by the parliament, will be given an upper hand, and the law made by legislature of state, it shall be void. The last line, to the extent of repugnancy be void. But how to determine this repugnancy? Now there is a test of repugnancy which is given in the case of Deepchand versus State of Uttar Pradesh. It is an important case. There are 3 cases in this topic: Baijnath versus State of Bihar, M. Karunanidhi versus Union of India, and the first one which I will be telling you in that very next, Deepchand versus State of Uttar Pradesh. The Supreme Court has laid down some tests for determining the repugnancy between the union law and a state law. First point, A point, if you see the second point, A. There may be inconsistency in actual terms of 2 statutes. When one says do and the other says do not. This is what I told you. So there can be an actual terms, there can be some inconsistency. When one statute is saying do it and the other one is saying do not. So there arises an inconsistency. That will also lead to the repugnancy. Then second point is for determining repugnancy between union law and state law. When both the state and union law, they seek to exercise their power over the same subject matter. Now both of the law, state and union law, they seek to exercise their power over the same subject matter. And the third point, though there may be no direct conflict, a state law will be inoperative because the union law is intended to be a complete exhaustive code. This was given under Deepchand case. So in order to decide the question of repugnancy, it must show that the 2 enactment contain some inconsistent and irreconcilable provision. There has to be a first thing, direct conflict. Then when both the state and union law, they seek to exercise their power over the same subject matter. Right? Moving on to, we'll further understand the case of Baijnath versus State of Bihar. But I can tell you a bit more about this Deepchand case. What exactly was the case? A brief. UP Transport Services Act authorized the state government to frame schemes for nationalization of motor transport. So this law was necessitated because the Central Motor Vehicle Act 1939 did not contain any such provision. Therefore, the law was necessitated. But later Parliament amended the Act by adding few new chapters which enable the state government to frame and execute schemes of nationalization, right, of motor transport. Then it was held that 2 law belongs to same field and the state law to the extent of repugnancy is void. So when it is declared that both of the laws, they belong to the same field, then the state law shall be made void. Right? As the new chapter in this act, it did not indicated that schemes already finalized should be reopened. So therefore, the act made by state was held to be void. And hence these 3 tests was laid down. Test of repugnancy in this case. Moving on to Baijnath. Baijnath versus this is State of Bihar. Now in this case, Parliament passed the Mines and Mineral Regulation and Development Act 1957 under entry 54 of Union List. So Parliament passed it under the entry 54 of the Union List, which it is empowered to make law on. Now declaring to take under Union's control the regulation of mine and the development of mineral. The Bihar legislature, it enacted the Bihar Land Reform Amendment Act, which amended the Bihar Land Reform Act 1950. See, they brought Bihar Land Reform Amendment Act 1964, which amended the Bihar Land Reform Act 1950. So they declared Parliament, this was simple, they declared to take under Union's control the regulation of mine and development of mineral as it was provided in the Act. In M. Karunanidhi versus Union of India, Supreme Court summarized the test of repugnancy. What did it say? Before moving on to the exception, we'll understand it. Now, according to him, repugnancy would arise between the two statutes in following situation. So, it summarized it. It was given already in Deepchand case. First point was that it must be shown that there is clear and direct inconsistency between the two enactments, Central Act and State Act, which is irreconcilable. What is irreconcilable mean? Meaning, it means different from each other, that they cannot be made compatible. Right? So it must be shown that there is a clear and direct inconsistency between the two enactments, Central Act and State Act, which is irreconcilable, and so that they cannot stand together or operate in the same field. And the second point was that there can be no repeal by implication unless the inconsistency appear on the face of two statutes. And third, where the two statutes occupy a particular field, but there is room or possibility of the both statutes operating in the same field. Then fourth, there is no inconsistency, but a statute occupying the same field, which seeks to create distinct and separate offence. And no question of repugnancy arises. Both the statutes, they continue to operate in the same field. So this was all summarized by Supreme Court. Now there is one exception which is given under 254(2) clause. Now what does this say? Is the rule, the suburb rule of repugnancy. This rule, it is subject to some exception which is provided under clause 2 of the 254 article. This is moreover given under this case. So first point would be still possible for the Parliament under the provision of the clause 2 to override such a law by subsequent making a law on the same matter. If it makes such a law, the state law would be void to the extent of repugnancy with union law. We have done with this. Now let us understand this thing. Zavir Bhai versus State of Bombay. Now the Parliament enacted the Essential Supplies Act 1946 for the regulating production and distribution of essential commodities. Parliament enacted this act. Now contravention of any provision of the above act, it was punishable with 3-year imprisonment and a fine, or it could be both, 3-year imprisonment and fine. Then in 1947, considering the punishment inadequate, Bombay legislature passed an act. See, Parliament enacted this act, Essential Supplies Act, and considering this punishment to be inadequate, Bombay legislature, it passed an act which enhanced the punishment, which was provided by the central law. Now, Bombay Act, it received the assent of the President also, and thus it prevailed over the central law and became operative in Bombay. But in 1950, Parliament amended its Act of 1946, the Essential Supplies Act 1946, and enhanced the punishment. So in this case, it was held that as both occupied the same field in sense that enhancing the punishment, so the state law became void as being repugnant to central law. Both of central and state, they were making law for enhancing punishment, right? So in this case, state law becomes void, repugnant to the central law. And above this, in our constitution, there are 5 extraordinary situations where the Union Parliament will be competent to legislate on matter in the statelets. Now there are 5 other matter where Union Parliament will be competent even to legislate on the matters given in state list, even after this. Now what are those 5? Here, 5 extraordinary situations. First is Parliament power to legislate on state subject. First one is, power in national interest. See, though this distribution of power, it is strictly maintained, it must be strictly maintained, and neither the state nor the center can encroach upon their sphere, which is allotted by the constitution. But in certain exceptional circumstances, this system of distribution, it is either suspended or the power of Union Parliament is extended over the subject which is mentioned under state list. Now this comes completely under exceptional circumstances. Does not happen usually, but exceptional circumstances. Now like first one, power of Parliament to legislate in national interest. Now Parliament can make laws under Article 249, Clause 1 in the matter of national interest. Now according to 249, if Rajya Sabha, it passes a resolution supported by 2/3 of member present and voting, which is necessary in the national interest, that Parliament should make law with respect to any matter given in state law. So this can only happen if Rajya Sabha passes a resolution which is supported by 2/3 of member present and it's voting. In that case, the Parliament can legislate in any matter which is enumerated in state list. So in such situation, it shall be lawful for the Parliament to make law for whole or any part of territory of India with respect to that matter, so long as the resolution remains in force. Then during a proclamation of emergency, so first point over here is importance in national interest. Second is during a proclamation of emergency. Now according to Article 250, when there is while the proclamation of emergency is in operation, Parliament will have power to make law for either whole or any part of territory of India with respect to all the matters in state list. In case of emergency, it has power to make law for either whole or any part of India, territory of India, with respect to matter in state list. Though if such law is made, it shall be ceased to have effect after expiration of 6 months, after the proclamation of emergency is ceased to operate. And this proclamation of emergency, so during, first is in national interest, then proclamation of emergency, then third is Parliament power to legislate with the consent of state. which is given under Article 252. Now, if the legislature of two or more states, listen to it carefully, if the legislature of two or more states, they pass a resolution where it is desirable, for them it is desirable to have a law which has to be passed by parliament on any matter in state list. So with the consent of state, this is what third point says, parliament power to legislate with the consent of state. In that case, it shall be lawful for parliament to make law regulating that matter. Right? Then the fourth point is parliament power to legislate for giving effect to treaties and international agreement. Now this deals with Article 253, which empower the parliament to make law, again for the whole or any part of territory of India, for implementing the treaties and international agreement and convention. If there is some treaty, there is some international agreement and convention, to implement it, the parliament have power under Article 253 to make the law. So in other words, basically the normal distribution of power, if I say it in some, if I explain it to you in that, in normal distribution of power, it will not stand in way of parliament to pass a law for giving effect to an international obligation, even though such law relates to any subject of the state list, right? Therefore, this parliament have a power to legislate for giving effect to treaty and international agreement. Then, fifth point is in case of failure of constitutional machinery in a state. This is given under Article 356. Parliament is empowered to make law with respect to all matter in the state list when Parliament declare that the government of state cannot be carried on in accordance with the provision of constitution. This is when there is a failure of constitutional machinery in state. Now Article 356, it says that president, it basically provides that president, after president declares the government in a state, it cannot be carried on in accordance with the provision of constitution. Then he may by proclamation further declare that the power of legislature of state shall be exercisable by under the authority of parliament. So having so authorized, parliament can make law with respect to matter in the state list also. And any law made by the parliament, it would be operative in that state only. So that's it. These were the 5 points, important 5 points over repugnancy, over the exceptional circumstances where parliament can. Look, I told you the 3 cases where how it was shown that how central law is prevailing over the state law, right? And how state law is becoming void, as being repugnant. Then over this cases, this situation, constitution specifically, it gives the 5 extraordinary situations where union parliament were competent to legislate on matter in state list. Now the 5 were in national interest, which is given under 249, then proclamation of emergency given under 250, parliament power to legislate with consent of state given under 252, then for giving effect to treaty and international agreement, and in case of failure of constitutional machinery in state under 356, right? So this is all for today, and in the next one we'll be doing about emergency. Thank you.